We are live right now with a longtime friend of mine. And boy, there's so many stories about him, but I'll let him tell some of those. Johnny Quintana, member of the Youngstown State University Penguins as a fullback and a tight end, quite frankly. And John, you got to be a member of three teams that won to the one AA national championship in 91 as part of the title team, 92, the runner-up, and 93 when you won it all, and you were a big factor in the 1993 season in the 17-5 conquest of Marshall out at Huntington, West Virginia. And I'll never forget that feeling of being on the field and seeing you guys jump up and down and how thrilling that was. How you doing, John?
Man, I'm doing fantastic, and really to follow somebody of the class of Diane Rapich, my goodness, I'm absolutely flattered.
Well,
I don't know. I have a feeling I'm going to bring this show down in a big hurry. So,
John, you're not a bad-looking guy, but I got to tell you, you can't hold a candle to Diane.
You know what?
My gosh.
You have no idea how relieved I am to hear you say that.
She is aged gracefully, beautifully. We got to get into your career here. First of all, you went to Wellington High School, and you got offered a scholarship because of your success at Wellington by Jim Tressel and the Youngstown State University Penguins. Describe the recruiting process and how you ended up in the red and white in Youngstown, Ohio.
It is quite. I tell everybody that it's flat out a God story through and through, because through the recruiting process, you get a million letters from all these different schools that are showing interest in you, and then as it came down to it, I only ended up taking two official visits. One at Youngstown and one at Bowling Green. And Bowling Green fell off the radar, and even we attended. They had us out there the weekend of the banquet. And my parents got to sit through the banquet. My mom, Coach Tress used to do the thing where us as seniors would give a rose to somebody that was very influential in our lives. And my mom sat and watched that program, and we got done with the banquet. And she turned and looked at me and says, "You need to play here. I don't care if we have to pay for it, but you need to come here." And as it worked out, everybody had fallen off the radar, and even Coach Tress told me. He called me up the week before signing date, and he said, "I've got one guy in front of you. I don't have a scholarship for you right now. There's a guy I have in front of you. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get him, but if it happens that he goes to Pitt like I think he will, then I'll have a scholarship for you." And he said, "I'll call you next week." And he called me next week on the dot. He said, "I didn't get him, sure enough, and I would like, I do have a scholarship for you. I'd like to have you come play football." And I jumped on it right away, of course, and the rest is history. I mean, it's just amazing to me looking back, how it worked out when you think you're going to have your choice to go anywhere and stuff. But I'd say I landed in a pretty good place and was very grateful, and God really knew what he was doing in that one. So.
It's amazing, too. I texted Tress the other night after we locked you into the program at Breaking Batch, and I said, "John Quintana's going to be on." And I said, John said and told me that you were like a fatherly figure to him. And right away, he said, "Quint is the man." So everybody called you Quint, including head coach Tressel. How did that come about? Obviously from Quintana, but did Coach Tressel, was he one of the first to start calling you Quint, or is that something you had in high school? Where'd that come from?
No, it came strictly from college. Everybody called me Q in high school, and that, but it just became a college thing, and everybody started calling me that. And I'm sure they could have called a bunch of worse things. I was fine with it. But no, it's just the great leadership that we had. I mean, we were so blessed, to have 4 years with a Hall of Fame coach that at the time, when he's just building the program and you're seeing the step-by-step detail that he really put into it. One of his book, the Winner's Manual that he put out there for proceeds going to cancer research and stuff. It was so interesting in my perspective, having a chance to be in the room with him for 4 years, and the man's the same man behind closed doors that he is in front of the cameras and stuff, which says a lot about his integrity in that. But to be able to learn from somebody as detailed and scripted out as he is, and to see the scripture that he put behind every aspect of his coach's plan and his game planning, and everything that he had us do had a purpose to it, and that he was building men and people more so than he was building players. And I think that in itself was most resonating with me. As I've gone on from the playing days there to even being a coach here in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, speaking of which, you are a coach out there. You assisted the head coach in 2019 at Fort Wayne Homestead High School, and the team won 11-1. So John Quintana gets into coaching out at Fort Wayne, Indiana. How'd you enjoy that experience?
Well, I tell you what, it's believe me, I have such a small part on that staff. We've got some amazing men. Coach Zolman leading the charge there, and Coach Messel and defensive coordinator Coach Skelton. These guys, I thought that I knew a lot about football coming in. I was thinking maybe I could really add to the thing, and I find myself challenged every week just trying to keep up with that. Greg Davis, our offensive line coach. I mean, these guys are guys that know X's and O's better than a lot of people that I've ever met. So I just hope to not bring down the charge, but try to bring a little bit of Tressel ball in and that championship mindset that we had, and hopefully be of a little bit of an incident, a little bit of an influence to help the team perform that much better. But I mean, we're surrounded. We've got great kids here and great coaches here, and can't say enough about the opportunity that I have. It was really cool walking up I walked up to Coach Zolman before when we were in pregame warm-ups before our first game this past year, and I just walked up to him just so humble. I looked at him. I said, thank you for letting me be a part of this. And he just looks at me and says, "This is pretty fun, isn't it?" And it's like, oh my God, this is a blast being able to just be back around the game and be able to sow something into these guys' lives and just be a part of it.
Let's talk about your run at Youngstown State University. Most of your playing time would come from the national championship season 1993. True? 1990, I remember we got knocked out. I think it was Central Florida on a late field goal. 91 won the first title game, big rally to beat Marshall down at Georgia Southern. 92 rallying from that 28-0 deficit. Nick Cochran led, who was a former guest on this program. Willie Merrick's field goal beats us at the end, a guy that had never kicked a field goal at the collegiate level, subbing for his brother. And then in 93, the dramatic 17-5 win over Marshall. How much of a role did you play through your campaign from 90 through 93? Most of it was 93, was it not, John?
Well, no, it was 92 and 93. As we were coming up, I just remember the game. I probably should have been flagged on a play that knocking Tamron into the end zone, where he got stood up at the goal line, and I just came running in, and it was so funny because I see him stood up, and I turned about the 7, and I just got up off the ground of the 7. I see him stand up. I just come running and just flying into him, and just drilled him right in the back, completely knocked the wind out of him, and he looks up. We're laying on the ground. He looks up at me. He's like, "Thanks, Quint."
He could hardly breathe.
He could hardly breathe. Got him off the field, and stuff. But it was a fun. That was just such a fun game, in that a testimonial to the Youngstown fight. Of never giving up. Down 28-0 halfway through the third quarter. All of our, a lot of the fans had even left, and to hear the stories from people like saying, "Oh my gosh, we got on the highway and turned on the game, and all of a sudden it was tied," and to fight our way back into it, but. That was obviously not as exciting, not as a fun year as the senior year was, but to be a part of that great group of guys was still very humbling.
What did it mean for Jim Tressel to place his confidence in you and name John Quintana a valuable part of 2 title teams in 92 and 93? Quint, you're going to be my guy. I believe in you. I trust you. You're going to be part of something great here. What did that mean coming from him, who you described as being like a father figure?
Well, it's funny you asked that, because the whole time that I was there, all 4 years, being only 6 foot tall and 240 pounds, you don't see too many 6 foot tall tight ends in Division I football. And I literally, my mindset the whole time was the only thing that I had to offer, I wasn't the fastest guy, I wasn't the strongest guy, and there's lots of examples where I've proven I wasn't the smartest guy. The only thing I had was work ethic, that I was going to try to outwork everybody there and just, put it all out there. And so I was always playing from a position in my own mind is that I don't belong here. I was afraid that I was going to miss a block or make a mistake, that I'd end up on the sideline and never see the field again. So maybe out of fear, or I don't know what you call it, but I just try to keep working my tail off and learning as much as I can. And I did okay academically, so I always tried to know the offense as best as I could, that I could be an asset to the team. But it was humbling that I was excited to be on the field every chance that I got, but I was like in my own mind saying, just making sure I didn't screw it up.
Quint, take me inside the locker room in that 1992 title game. We'll get to 93, but when you guys finally did win it with you as a member, prominent member of the team. But take me inside that locker room. You're down 28-0. Coach Tressel, what's he saying to you? Don't panic. Hey, man, if we just go out and play Penguin football, we can come back and do this. He had to have said something or motivated you kids in some way that you guys went out and you started to deliver for him.
I think the biggest thing that I remember him saying, and I use it all the time with our kids, is to, he would always say, if you keep hitting them, if you keep fighting, if you keep working, good things will happen. And so, just constantly staying on, just that relentless attitude that we just keep pounding on somebody and keep beating on them. And eventually, the defense would make a play, or, we'd bust one open and Tamron or Darnell would make a huge run, or, Herb Williams would make a big catch. And, it was just somebody would step up and make a play. And if we didn't make the critical mistakes that a lot of teams will make, that'll shoot themselves in the foot. And, we just stayed after it. And then all of a sudden, we put the first score up, and then the second, and then the third. And now we've got momentum. And of course, from 91, they had a lead, 17-6 going into the fourth quarter.
17-6, yeah.
Ended up losing the game, to us. So I know that there had to be a bit of a pucker factor on their part of here we go again. But, I think it was just the same message that we always sent. We got to eliminate mistakes, eliminate FIPS, and keep hitting them hard, and eventually something good will happen, and it did.
Marshall, 3 consecutive years. Did you guys hate Marshall? Was it, in fact, a rivalry unlike any other? I remember I was doing a morning show then, and we hooked up with the radio broadcast team from Huntington, West Virginia, the home of the Thundering Herd, and we were making all these bets in it, but they were so cocky and arrogant about everything, and it was like, we're going to beat you, and, the scoreboard, can't take 3 digits and stuff, and there was a lot of ribbing and kidding, but there was a bit of arrogance coming out of Marshall against Youngstown State, you have to admit.
Well, I think it was more so after the 92 game, when they were, when we're trying to get on the bus and, walk to the bus, and the fans are driving by and they're blowing their horns and they're one finger saluting us and, telling us how bad we sucked. And,
wow.
All this. And that was, on our champion, it's fun is that, we had that as a motivational thing all year long. We had HOH on everything. The Horns of Huntington was our main focus, because we wanted to run the table. We wanted to get back to Marshall, whether, and we were hoping that they would make it back, because we really wanted to take it to them on their home field. And sure enough, we did what we needed to do, and we took care of the things that we needed to take care of to make it back. And so did they. And the way that we came out in the game, it just flat out said, here's our chance. Let's just tear it up. And made some plays, and made some big plays early, and set the stage.
John, did the team ever feel that it was unfair that the 1AA title games being played on Marshall's home turf?
I don't think we did. I mean, you've got to have, as Tressel always talked about, having road focus, having that special attention to detail when you're playing a road game, anyways. And for us, we had it was just a matter of where it went. I don't think we cared where we played. We were glad. In fact, the fact that we that we, came back from 28-0 in '92 and made it a game on their home field and almost embarrassed them there was a feat. But to be able to go back down there and just flat out take it to them on their home field was especially rewarding.
One thing I want to say about you, and I don't know if you instill it to anybody that comes into your life, but one thing, and this is a huge part of the collegiate life, is it should be anyway. It's not all about athletics. Academics always took a precedence with you. In fact, you were a first-team academic All-American. You were the first person in Youngstown State history to be nominated for a Rhodes Scholarship, which is a premier award. So the grades and being successful in a classroom was always essential to John Quintana. And John, I remember doing a spotlight interview with you. You were a Penguin Player of the Week on the pregame show, and you looked me straight in the eye and you said, you know what, I'm going to own my own Fortune 500 company. I never forgot that, and I loved you ever since there, brother. Now, it didn't quite work out that way, but you've still been successful. But the big point being, academics was always a strong suit of yours.
Well, I always say it's the game's not over yet. I've been, through, as far as my personal life goes, I was, married for 18 years, and I made a lot of sacrifices in my career so that my son's mother and my ex-wife could make a lot of the advancements that she made, and she's in one of those roles now and does an amazing job at her career, and she's really is an amazing mother as well. So, you sacrifice some things, but I don't know. I've had the opportunity to work in sales at several different levels in the building industry, from major manufacturers to distributors and installation companies, and working with homeowners and builders and everything. So, I'm getting to the point where, I can take all of that experience and wrap it into something great. And, if I ever end up starting a company or maybe buying one at some point along the way, fantastic. But, I've definitely learned a lot on the trail, and looking for the future, and, having coaches in my life like I've had, is definitely, it's all coming together.
And I think Jim Tressel will help pave the way for you. It wasn't just about football, it was about life. And knowing what I know about JT, Coach Tressel, it's still hard for me to call him president. I still call him coach every time I see him. I said, and that is never going to change. But he helped provide a blueprint for you a long time ago. Let's go to the 1993 title team. And it began on a nearly auspicious note. It was a rainy night in Kalamazoo, Michigan. They brought in portable lights to Western Michigan. That was the first time they'd ever done that. And I think it was on a Thursday night, and it was a little bit slippery out there. And, talk about the Penguin pride and believe it and everything. This was going to be a prelude of things to come in the very first game. And you talked about, Bowling Green had recruited you out of Wellington High School. But if you look at it under the Tressel era, he owned the MAC for the most part, and he did it again that night. You guys were down 13-3, and I think Birch and Tom Dillingham covered and ran into the end zone on a fumble recovery, which really gave you guys a lot of life. But you beat Western Michigan 17-13 in front of 30,000, first night game in their school history. What did that feel like? Did you guys at that point say, hey, we just beat an elite team in the MAC? I think they were second in the MAC the prior year, and they were looking probably ahead to you guys to play Purdue. There you go. You come back, you beat them on their home turf with all that going on. That had to give you guys a ton of confidence that season.
Well, we had very high expectations that year anyways, but it's just, when you're trying to get to where you want to go, you have to stay focused on what's in front of you, and that's all we did, and we kept at it and kept working and kept hitting, and it seemed like there was teams out there that that inside their heart of hearts or whatever, they may or may not have that winning instinct or that winning, I don't know, that expectation that you get that momentum thing, and there were several games that when we were playing that we seemed to be step in step with people, and then all of a sudden we would hit a big play or something, and it was like they quit playing. Like your average teams would just stop playing. your championship teams would keep hitting you, blow for blow. But some of those, and it just seems like that's kind of what happened in that game. But we were able to make some plays and pull out the win, and we took care of what we needed to take care of, and that's about all we can control.
There were only 2 defeats that year. One was the Stephen F. Austin. I remember that game out in Texas. That was tough. I think the long plane flight had something to do with it. And then Illinois State, which was coached by, I think, Jim Haycock, who was John Haycock's brother at the time. That was a nail-biter, though, that could have went either way. But other than that, nobody stopped the Penguins in 93. And we talk about our success in the MAC, and we did it again in the regular season finale, beating Jerry Faust in Akron 19-0 at the Rubber Bowl. So we head into the postseason, and what was the mind process with the YSU football team in 1993? We're feeling pretty good, but you would have 3 formidable foes up in front of you before you got to the championship.
Well, again, it's just one step at a time at that point. We have to, championship teams, and tell our guys all the time that you just, the team that makes the fewest mistakes in tournament play wins the game. Everybody's good at that point. And it's just, you have to eliminate all your errors as best you can, maintain your focus, and that's all we did. And we could only take care of one play at a time, but we had that biggest motivation of getting back to Huntington, and that's we were fixated on that.
Let's go back to those historic playoff games in that run, and boy, you guys just battered opposition. And I remember looking at the scouting reports for the teams that you were playing. I'm like, these guys are tough. But everybody looks good on paper until you get out there on the field. Payback time. Central Florida beat us on a late field goal, 20-17 in 1990. You guys put up 35 first-half points on Central Florida. Yeah, Central Florida, that national power that is renowned now in college football, 56-30, including 35 first-half points. That had to be a momentum builder for you guys in saying, okay, we can play with the big boys and only play with the big boys at the 1AA level. We're going to beat the best of the best.
Well, that was all of us that were seniors that year were freshmen, and remember that getting beat in the first round of playoff games in 1990 by Central Florida, coming off that 11-0 season when we thought we were going somewhere and had that rude awakening. So we just always remembered it, and we said that was our first chance to send a message back to them that we didn't really appreciate that, but we got the job done and came out aggressively and executed a game plan. So a lot of things went right for us.
And then a legendary coach, Paul Johnson with Georgia Southern. You talk about a traditional program. Back in the early 90s, Georgia Southern was the bomb. And here Youngstown State goes head-to-head with it, and you guys blast them out of the park 34-14.
Well, that was the best game that was the funnest game of my career, because I was as one of what we called ourselves the maggots as the offensive line. I got to catch a couple touchdown passes in that game.
Coach Asher, right?
Yeah, well, absolutely. But it's being able to. It was a funny thing because I was looking in the record book the one day, and because of that game, I actually made the Youngstown State record book for the most career touchdown catches in a playoff game, tied with 4 other guys.
Woohoo!
And so absolutely. Well, and it's so funny because I only had 13 career catches, and those were the only 2 touchdown receptions I ever had. So
but look when they came, Quint. Come on, look when they came.
Absolutely. So no, but it was a fun, and it was so funny when Brungard let go of the first one. It was like a 28-yard catch. It was a scramble drill, and I was running the shallow route. And I said, the shallow guys go deep and the deep guys come shallow. So I turned off and ran to the back of the end zone. He let go of that ball, and it seemed like 5 minutes before that thing was coming down. And I was waiting to get hit by somebody or something coming in. All of a sudden it hit, and I'm just thinking, don't drop it. And somehow it stuck. But but it was a great effort by the whole team, and just being in that position to make a couple plays, and it was a lot of fun for sure.
And then you guys find yourself one win away from getting another crack at Marshall, getting revenge for the 1992 heartbreaking loss. You face a high-powered offense led by quarterback Doug Nussmeier in a snowstorm at the Ice Castle at Stambaugh Stadium, and all these gaudy numbers. Well, look at what Idaho's done. The Vandals are this, the Vandals are that. 35-16, all Penguins. Total blowout.
Well, and those guys are used to playing in that nice little dome they had out in in Idaho, and we knew that the conditions were going to be definitely what we're used to in Youngstown, especially that time of year, and the wind blowing, and that would have an effect on Nussmeier's throwing arm and that. But our defense played a heck of a game though too, and it was just we had our eyes set on that goal, and we're burned. We're laser focused on the target of taking Marshall out again, and at that point now you could smell it. And again, we just had to do what we did and maintain control of the game, and we're able to make it work.
And so it is. Huntington, West Virginia, familiar place. And Darnell Clark, I could never forget him running down the sideline, breaking a play early, giving you guys momentum. Chris Parker stopped with a tremendous one for the ages, goal line stand by the defense. And Tamron Smith and Johnny Quintana and Mark Brungard, and you guys just put it all together in a perfect game and beating Marshall 17-5, a resounding win, national television. What was that scene like? What was the feeling like to realize that John Quintana just played a prominent role in a national championship team?
Well, John Quintana was just happy to be there. I can tell you that. But to be able to play, Mark Brungard set a record, most consecutive completions or something in a championship game. That he was just spot on with his decision making and his leadership. What an incredible quarterback to play for and play with, and Darnell and Tamron, those guys were just so special through and through. Making plays one right after another. Out of there, but the offensive line that I got to play next to, the Ray Millers and the Drew Gerbers and Samarone and Tomash, and my goodness, we had those guys were legends, and just hoping that I could do my part of it and not bring the team down, and it was just a lot of fun and a tremendous honor to be part of such a great system that Coach Tressel and the coaching staff had put together.
True or false, a picture of that 1993 title game at Huntington and the 17-5 win hang within the framework of your office, true?
It's on top of my desk, actually. I got to get a stand for it because I can't hang it on the wall, but I got the panoramic.
I saw a picture of that, Johnny.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've got a big panoramic of the whole stadium, Phil, that I've got to get that displayed. But yeah, I've been able to come across a couple of pictures from the years, both from the athletic department. Ron Strollo hooked me up with that one on the end of the line that he had when he took over as athletic director. And you want to talk about somebody that was an incredible mentor to me as a sophomore, and I think half the time he wanted to choke me, and the other half the time, he was like, encouraging me along, because you take a guy that I was a linebacker, and what I was used to is just making a read and going and hitting somebody and try to hit them as hard as I can and try to get somebody to learn how to play under control. Those guys were just laughing at me all the time because they used to bounce off everybody and wasn't quite getting it right away and that. But he was patient enough and gracious enough to stay with me and keep teaching me and keep working with me, and everything worked out.
John Quintana, Quint, I can't thank you enough for being with me, and I do think, brother, that your better days are ahead. What an incredible run you had during your days in red and white Penguin gear. 47-9-1 was your record. You're also a prominent John Maxwell speaker. I couldn't be prouder of you, my man.
Well, John, thank you so much for all you're doing for the program. It's great to see you back in the chair and back in the media where you do such a great job as well. And looking forward to the Doug Phillips era at Youngstown State. So.
Yeah, I think Doug's going to do a great job and somebody you're very familiar with. Thank you, Quint.
Absolutely. You're welcome.